My name is Patrick Haan, and the reason I'm here and we're having this discussion is I wrote a book. The title of the book, The Alien Handbook, A Guide to Extraterrestrials. And it was released last year in the spring of 2018 by Ozark Mountain Publishing. And as a result of that, I was asked to come address the Ozark Mountain Publishing UFO conference this year in April of 2019. A great honor, pleasure to do it. Leading up to the writing of and then the release of the book is the work in general that I do. I have been accused of, correctly, of being a medium or a psychic or a channeler or some combination of the above. In other words, able to communicate telepathically with spiritual or energetic beings and or the souls of the deceased, meaning souls who used to live as a human. And I have done quite a bit of that and even self-published a book with several dozen of those channeling sessions with people that had passed on, generally well-known, famous people, historical figures, celebrities, all sorts of things like that. In general, I have channeled and published about, depending on the page size, 1,400 to 1,500 pages of channelings on a wide variety of subjects and topics, almost all relating back to human society and events on Earth. I have very often been consulted by people to do individual personal channeling on topics and to answer questions that they have about themselves or a certain situation that they know. And I have done that, continue to do it from time to time, but I don't do that on a regular basis, and I don't consider myself an intuitive channel that does that. But I will do it for people from time to time. I can do it, and I have done it, and have been told repeatedly by a number of people that the information I've helped provide to them is uncannily accurate, useful, and helpful, not just what they're told, but what they're not told, and also the timing of it. In almost every case, I have no idea what the value might be. I don't know the bigger picture. I have no ability, and no bona fide channel has any ability to break into anybody's personal thoughts or ideas. I can't read minds against anybody's will. But as soon as a question is posed, if it's within an area that I'm able and willing to channel, and that's almost any area other than criminality. I don't do criminality questions, and the moot point with criminality is I simply don't get the answer. If the question gets asked, I draw a complete blank. Nothing comes back, whether it's culpability or innocence. Questions like, did Michael Jackson really do what ... A blank comes back. I don't get a positive or negative on that. Other than that, I answer all sorts of questions. This process of channeling and posting things to my website and talking to a number of energetic and spiritual entities, principally people's guardian angel guides, my own, led to a number of topics on the subject of alien extraterrestrials, UFOs, non-human intelligence, etc. So I pursued that, and eventually that led to the composition of the book. I am not a ufologist. I'm not a studier of UFO phenomenon or things like that. I'm very interested in it, but not for the reasons most people in the general public are interested, which is entertainment or information about the alien extraterrestrials. I'm not really that interested in them. Many people are intensely interested and want to know every single detail about where, when, how, what they look like, what their names are, even though they don't really have names. I want to know what they can tell us about humanity and Earth society from the benefit of their point of view and their experience. Almost all of the things that humanity faces and that we're going through and have gone through, particularly in the last several hundred years, I would say since, in Western civilization, certainly, the Renaissance, the ending of the Dark Ages and the Renaissance moving forward, all of these things, to a greater or lesser extent, have been faced by alien extraterrestrial civilizations in the history and development of their own societies, with vastly different outcomes, processes, or paths followed. Some of them make no sense to us on Earth until those steps are explained. Others fairly similar. they are, not literally, but figuratively, almost dying to tell us what we could do differently in terms of economics, human behavior, what we could do differently regarding overall physical well-being and health, how we might treat each other, how we could approach the issue of religious belief and worship and interaction between different peoples as it relates to those. And many other things. Scientific development, how we can use them, all that stuff I'm intensely interested in. And that's what I attempted to convey somewhat in the book that I wrote. Although the book does contain a lot of information about the aliens, it was mostly channeled a lot from my guardian angel guides. That's what I call them. A little bit of an aside on that topic. Everyone has at least one principal guardian angel, and that's a very small percentage of the human population that only has one. Most of us have several, and often the group of spirit guides or guardian angels or just guides, there are a number of terms that can be used, can expand quite a bit depending on the situation or the circumstances and what needs to be done according to an individual person's life plan, life agreement, or life contract. The circumstances and situation that they're in, they need this input. Well, I have them like everybody else. Many large, well-known, well-spread religious faiths speak openly and often about angels and the role that they play in human life. Mine, interestingly enough, work with me, which I discovered later on in a pre-agreed arrangement where they will supply information to me and answer questions that I pose to them and other people pose about certain specific topics. Alien extraterrestrials is one of them. I very much enjoy this because as many people enjoy hearing these interesting things about alien extraterrestrial technology, society, location, for every one of those that likes it, there's a skeptic, and some of them are very entertaining in their approach and their type of questions and their doubt. Just last night, I ran into a gentleman from a well-known UFO organization that immediately heard something I suggested and challenged me, saying, "What about the evidence?" To which I said, "There is no evidence, and the evidence there never will be until we, the humans, we, the people, are willing to consider what I'm suggesting. When we're willing to consider that, then we'll be able to move to the next step and pursue the evidence that you want." In a sense, hearing something controversial, the origin of the moon, it's a satellite of Earth, but is it a natural satellite of Earth or not? If not, where did it come from? How is it composed? Hearing suggestions about that sort of information that do not match up with current understanding or misunderstanding that humans have about the moon immediately provokes protests of what's the evidence behind what you're saying. That's backwards. We don't have that evidence. We're not going to be willing to consider that evidence until we're willing to consider what I'm saying might be true. Go into it with an open mind. Don't immediately judge, oh, that's good because it's black. That's good because it's white. Don't assume that it's good. Just look at it and acknowledge that it's new. Let's have a look and see what might be there if we're willing to accept that it exists and that it's real, that it's possible. And we'll decide for ourselves later on if it's good or bad or somewhere in the middle. Because almost everything in life is gray anyway. Just depends on how gray. Very light or very dark. What my guardian angel guides have shared with me about alien extraterrestrials is initial basic information about the concept in general, the type of information that wouldn't best come from one civilization or another, although that is also possible. But in general, what alien extraterrestrials mean to Earth. And what they told me essentially is, while Earth is populated with, I don't know, I'm not a botanist or a biologist, a huge number of species and animal types, all sorts of variations and permutations, birds, land mammals, plants, etc. And the development, evolution of many of them is true according to what we've studied and understand. Humans are not a part of that. Homo sapiens, as we call ourselves, are not a part of that. What my guides told me and shared with me was the origin of mankind, humanity on Earth as we know it, is artificial, and that we are all, in a sense, alien extraterrestrials ourselves. We are not a native species to Earth. The most developed animal species is what we have called alternatively the Sasquatch, the Yeti, or the Bigfoot. They are somewhat multidimensional. They are multidimensional compared to us as humans. They are the natural evolution of a species on Earth. They're nothing like us. Humans were created by an alien extraterrestrial civilization that visited Earth approximately 100,000 of our years ago. When I say our years, I mean a year is one revolution around the sun or one lap around the sun that we make. That we consider that a year. About 100,000 laps ago, give or take, is when we were created. We were created by chemical, atomic manipulation of the DNA molecule to produce a species with some characteristics resembling and similar to the alien extraterrestrials that created us, but also incorporating the physical abilities to survive in the Earth's surface environment. The composition of gases in the air, carbon dioxide, oxygen, nitrogen, and so forth. Dust, pollen, the composition of sunlight which reaches the surface, atmosphere humidity, things like that, we take for granted. All animals that can live on Earth tolerate that. That's their natural preferred environment. Well, this was not possible for the alien extraterrestrials. Also, different size planets have a different gravitational effect. We discovered that very clearly. Well, we knew it was going to happen, but we saw it very clearly demonstrated when humans first landed on the moon. It's much smaller, lesser gravity, very little effort, could cause somebody to easily run and jump and sail 30 feet. Whereas on Earth, you might sail 3 feet if you put forth that same effort. That happens to the alien extraterrestrials also. In some cases, Earth is too large, it's too heavy for them to move around. They struggle with the environmental gases, the oxygen content, it's either too much or too little, the intensity and composition of the sunlight. They simply can't spend very much time, in some cases, almost no time, on the surface in our environment. The purpose these alien extraterrestrials had in visiting Earth was to mine gold. They wanted to take the gold back to their home planet and use it to stabilize the climate, grind it up, put it in the atmosphere. Gold is a very good material for this because it will not oxidize. It will eventually fall out of the atmosphere, but if it's ground fine enough and dispersed at a certain altitude in almost any gaseous atmosphere, it will remain aloft, just like volcanic ash, clouds, smoke, things like that. When it eventually falls back to Earth, it's very easy to scoop up, collect, and redeposit. This produces two immediate effects. It causes the reflection of sunlight back up in the, or starlight, whatever incoming light there is, back up away, reducing the amount that will reach the surface. Doesn't make things dark, just makes less reach the surface. So there's less of an initial surface heating effect. As we know very well on Earth, sun comes out, it hits the ground, the air gets warmer. The air rises, humidity, clouds, rain, storms, all that results from the heating cycle. But the gold in the atmosphere also has a second effect. It also prevents the nighttime radiation of heat after the sunlight disappears. The overall general effect of this is to stabilize the climate. They were very much interested in the gold for this purpose, to take back to their planet, so they did. So they created a race of beings on Earth to do this physical work. We have found the remains of many members of this initial population, and we have called them Cro-Magnon or Neanderthal. But in reality, they were just different iterations, different versions of beings created through this genetic manipulation. After about 30 years of our years, the visitors' masters back on their home planet on the other side of the galaxy discovered what had been done and confronted their otherwise very successful explorers, miners, adventurers, scavengers, what have you, about their intentions. Okay, you've created, now there are thousands of these beings on Earth that you've created. What are you going to do? Just going to let them die? So at that point, the civilizations in our star cluster, our immediate area around Earth, were contacted and asked to become involved. At that point, the DNA of humans was upgraded. Therefore, we are all essentially hybrids with contributions from many, many alien extraterrestrial races. At that point, what changed principally was the shape of the human skull, the size of the eye sockets, the face, etc. And about a dozen, the DNA from about a dozen civilizations was contributed, not so much to changing our appearance. There was very little of that at that point after the initial 30-some-odd year phase. The changes were internal, especially to increase the adaptability of the new species to different environments and climates on Earth, so that as the beings migrated, they would change. Well, we have seen the results of this very clearly. We have white people, we have black people, we have tall people, we have short people, we have skinny people, people not so skinny, dark hair, light hair, clear eyes, dark eyes, etc., 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 and all the different combinations. And when a certain population moves to a certain part of the planet after about 20, 25 generations, a generation being roughly 20, 30 years, their appearance changes almost completely. The initial humanoid beings that were created, this was done in what is now today the nation of South Africa, particularly the northern part. But there is no evidence of this ever having occurred there. There was no temples, there were no edifications, no buildings, nothing. So there's nothing to find there. But that was the origin, and the principal amount of this gold mining and excavation took place in the continent of Africa, and the populations moved elsewhere and found it in different places. The adaptation period subsequent to the DNA upgrade lasted about 3 centuries of our time. In other words, about 300 laps around the sun, 300 years. That was a period where we were watched over and taught slowly to learn to survive in the Earth environment, to gather food, to hunt, to defend ourselves, protect ourselves, etc. During the first 30-year period, the beings that were created were cared for and watched over completely by the alien extraterrestrial creators. Well, if they were going to leave and we were going to survive on our own, we had to learn how to do it, and we did. Consider it was only 100,000 years ago, so a lot of the animal species that we see, for example, in Africa, were there. Imagine humans, and that would be most modern humans today that have lived in an urban or suburban environment, suddenly finding themselves in the middle of the Serengeti with all of the things that are there, the climate, the bugs, the diseases, hyenas, lions, tigers, rhinoceroses, and things might not work out very well over time. We're smart, we would learn to adapt. People have understood that certain environments we can't go into. This is what had to be learned. After the 300-year period was up, then a prime directive of sorts was put into place. From that point forward, no interference in human society by outside visitors. Observance, fine. Specific, focused interaction with individual members was okay, as long as these interactions did not interfere with or alter the course of human development in history beyond what human decisions about their lives, either individually or collectively, would produce, or things that would happen as a result of natural forces, weather, geological events, geophysical events, meteors, things from outer space, etc. Those are allowed to occur and still do occur, but no outside interference. 3 alien extraterrestrial civilizations took on the lead and still continue to hold that role of enforcing and watching over Earth to make sure that outside interference, as I described, does not occur. These are the civilizations from planets revolving around the star we call Sirius, S-I-R-I-U-S, That is the brightest star in the night sky. Very often looks to the naked eye nearly as bright as Venus, the planet. It is approximately eight light years from Earth. The second civilization from the many planets revolving around many stars in the Pleiades cluster. Pleiades, I believe, is a name of Greek origin. The Japanese call that cluster of stars Subaru, and in fact, that's the symbol of the car company Subaru. And you can see the little stars depicted on their oval logo. And the third, the alien extraterrestrials from planets revolving around the star we call Arcturus. There's also a fourth, which are kind of like the alternates. And these are alien extraterrestrials from the star Canopus, Canopus. Canopus is the brightest star in the southern hemisphere from Earth. Of course, we can see hundreds of thousands of stars from Earth, but these are the principal ones. These stars are very bright because they're either close or large. And as we have seen, somewhat, the larger a star, the more likely it is to have more planets revolving around it, and more planets in what's called a habitable zone, where the planet is close enough so that the radiation and sunlight coming from that sun in the center of the system is not too weak or too intense to support the development of all sorts of life. The Sirians look typically like what is called tall grays. They're generally the height or taller than humans. They're kind of grayish, almost bluish in color. Their body chemistry is silicon-based, not carbon, as we are. They're very smart, very intelligent, very advanced, very powerful technologically. And they are the chief enforcers of the prime directive. They will very much have the capability, and this capability is well known throughout the galaxy, to stop any attempt to interfere. But because this is well known, the attempts never occur. And no one approaching Earth really wants to try. It is just understood well in advance. That's not possible, that's not permitted. It's not that there is a great number of civilizations that would like to come interfere and invade and do things. They don't. Because they know that there's almost no benefit in doing it. It's only downside. How many humans are very interested in seeing what it feels like to fall off a tall building? Almost nobody. And we don't need to go try to find out that we really don't want to do it. That's how it is. The Sirians are the leaders pretty much in that issue. The Arcturans also. The Arcturans, similar to the Sirians, are also silicon-based biology. The Pleiadians are carbon-based, and the Pleiadians most closely resemble humans. In fact, we were created through the DNA manipulation to look mostly like the Pleiadians because of the physical conditions on Earth, the composition of gases in the atmosphere, the intensity of the sunlight, very closely resembles, I'm being told, at least 2 planets revolving around stars in the Pleiades cluster. The alien extraterrestrials who created us don't look like us very much. But they knew about and had met with the Pleiadians and thought that would be a good model for Earth. But using DNA characteristics from existing animals already on Earth, principally large chimpanzees, monkeys, gorillas. But we don't look anything like them, and we were not intended to look like them. But the ability to perspire, to have our skin color change based on exposure to ultraviolet rays, to grow facial hair, if need be, to protect the face, things like that were all adapted in, characteristics that the alien extraterrestrial visitors don't have and would need to be able to survive, to breathe the air, to have our physical cardiovascular capability change and improve with additional work, for the males especially to build muscle mass as a result of physical work over time, to become more used to it and then be able to develop the capability to do more work, all things that we take for granted. These are all the things that were incorporated in the DNA hybridization or the upgrade. We have spread all over Earth. The number of humans has increased geometrically or logarithmically, depending on one's mathematical preferences, very sharply, particularly in the last several hundred years. We're now up to 6 or 7, I forget the number, 6 or 7 billion humans on Earth. We are now coming close to the culmination of development, at least as it currently exists, for the third time amongst humans on Earth. The first time was the civilization referred to as Lemuria, which lasted up until approximately 65,000 years ago. In other words, this developed over the first 35,000 years of human intelligence. The second one, or human development and presence. The second, Atlantis, which came to its demise approximately 20,000 years ago. The generally accepted recorded human history that we have now, that's available to us, goes back about 6,000 years. So between 20,000 years ago and 6,000 years ago, over a period of about 14,000 years, the descendants, the refugees really, of the demise of the Atlantis civilization were developing and moving around Earth and creating what became the human cultures in Egypt, Mexico, Peru, and some other places, but generally those. And it is no coincidence that all of the structures, edifications, buildings in those three places to this very day are the subject of debate as to how they were developed, who built them, and in what way. Today, we are just now entering into a phase, and what has brought us to the critical point, or the critical mass, was the human discovery of how to play with matches. We figured out how to use nuclear energy. We figured out how to break open atoms. And what's the first thing we did with that? We built a bomb and we slaughtered a couple 100,000 people in a war. And the tragedy was, it was almost a necessary thing at the time, because had those bombs not been used to bring Imperial Japan to the point of surrendering, it is not a stretch to estimate that another 1.5 million to 2 million additional lives would have been lost in the military invasion of Japan to bring Japan to the same point to surrender and end the war, or crush them to the point where surrender almost became a moot point. What a terrible situation we, the people, the humans, put ourselves in, where slaughtering several 100,000 people is better than slaughtering 2 million. How about alternative A? Don't slaughter anybody. Don't start the darn war in the first place. But history being what it is, we were observed by alien extraterrestrials, as well as the guardian angel guides, individually and in the collective of all humans, with horror as we developed these weapons and then set them off. Almost curiously, this has never been done since. Many large, massive nuclear weapons, fusion and fission, have been built, a number of them tested, deployed all over the world, but none have ever been used in anger at another target. Because when a nuclear war has detonated, even if it doesn't kill anybody, it tests off in the desert and they're very carefully engineered so that there's no humans around. We humans now do not understand the effect this has with the energy release on energetic beings, even on other alien extraterrestrials that might happen to be nearby, who, for the most part, leave our solar system and go far away when we're going to do it. They don't want to be around. It has a very negative effect on them. Our guardian angel guides in the collective have stepped in and disabled many of these devices, and will do so if we attempt. That is the one exception to the non-interference. If we attempt to set off nuclear warheads in anger with the intent to harm, whether the self-defense aspect can be justified, as occurred in Japan, or otherwise, doesn't matter. Doing so would have such a negative effect to the energy grid of our galaxy, we're not allowed to do it. It will be disabled. So it could be said that that is interference, but interference to prevent us from annihilating ourselves? Is that really interference? So that is the one exception that has occurred. But Since our entry as humans, as a collective, the entire planet, into the nuclear age, since 1945, the amount of attention that we receive has really increased. And we have been speculated about, humans have speculated intensely, regularly, about alien extraterrestrials, UFOs, unidentified flying phenomena of all types, non-human intelligence, since then, because of this. And I certainly understand the interest many of the readers of my material had. And that's what got my interest going also. And I've been told by my guides and many of the alien extraterrestrials who were perfectly happy to communicate with me that wider, broader, more across the board revelation is coming. But it is going to come only when we, the people, we humanity, reach a critical mass, similar to a majority vote. Let's take a side example, a political election. Somebody's running for the county judge, somebody's running for the governor, whatever. Well, how does that person win? People have to vote. Well, who can vote? Well, anybody's an adult, you're going to go register, etc. There might be one person who is very, very aware of the issues, has studied the candidates very closely. On election day, they show up at the polls and they cast their ballot. There might be somebody else who remembers the morning of the election, squeezes a little time out of the day and bothers to show up and vote, doesn't know anything about the candidates and picks one arbitrarily. Both of those votes count equally. The amount of knowledge, awareness, understanding, the preferences of the one over the other based on that doesn't matter. One person, one vote. That's pretty much the way it works with mankind when it comes to alien extraterrestrials. Because their presence and the knowledge that aliens have made open across the board contact that is irrefutable, that cannot be denied, will have to occur when humans collectively reach critical mass, when enough of us vote with our desires, our thoughts. I don't think there's going to be a worldwide election where we all go to the polls and cast a ballot and push the button or punch the hole. But when we decide that we want this to happen. Now, if we were to do this, as all humans, the aliens would show up tomorrow, next week, in a bigger way. However, the aliens understand very well the typical reaction of most people, and 50% of humans being shown an alien in close proximity would immediately assume it's a confrontation, that it's something to be fearful of, or just downright scared, and would do everything from grab guns to go hide and lock doors, call the police and everything else. If 100,000 people in a huge football stadium suddenly see a group of alien extraterrestrials land their craft on the 50-yard line of the football field in the middle of that stadium at halftime and come out, how are they going to react? Are 50,000 going to start a stampede in fear to get out of there? How does that help anybody? Because the way things are right now, the chance of that occurring are high. They're not low. And that would cause a lot of harm. And the aliens know this. Plus, the other people that wouldn't do that, the many, many people that are interested in the topic, that are very, very tuned in, that would love to see this, are not really interested in what the aliens want to tell us about ourselves, about our society, and what things we can do to help ourselves. To the contrary, many people interested in the subject casually or some intensely want thrills, they want entertainment, they want a movie, they want gadgets, they want machines, they want to see ray guns, or they want to see aliens come in and cure cancer or cure whatever, or take away all the weapons and make everybody behave. They're never going to do that. They're never going to interfere with us. Many people interested in the subject of alien extraterrestrials are frustrated that only government leaders are contacted. But government leaders are us. We create governments. We choose the leaders. Even in a kingdom with a tyrannical, dictatorial king that has terrorized the vast majority of the population, except the few that such a king has agreed to allow into his or her, if it's queen, inner, or kings, if there's two of them, inner circle, and handed them all sorts of power and privilege in order to buy their performance and terrorize everybody. And there have been many examples of that throughout history. Even in a situation like that, if the vast majority of the subjects of such a tyrannical, dictatorial king suddenly all together, everybody together, all at once, the same day, said, I'm not getting up, I'm not going out, I'm not doing anything, you can't make me do it, and behaved like protesters who sometimes will throw themselves in front of construction cranes, bulldozers, whatever, and just lie on the ground, and they're awake, but they lie there completely limp and refuse to obey commands and refuse to act. If the vast majority of adults, certainly in a society, did that, such an action would completely neutralize that king. And the tyrannical dictatorial behavior would evaporate by lunchtime because people cannot be forced to do things against their will when it really comes down to it. But does that ever happen? Well, the aliens watch all this, and they'll watch everything from a relatively benevolent society that is very much democratic, elected, where the majority of the members of that society feel they have a voice, they have elections, they make decisions, they accept a decision, and they go forward. There are many examples of this in the world, all the way to the other extreme. The aliens watch all of this. All of these things are human creations. There are no societal structures on Earth that were engineered or created off Earth by somebody else. These are all the result of our own decisions. So we pick the leaders, we give all the authority to the leaders, we constantly turn around and obey the leaders, and we say, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. Well, that's who the aliens contact. Who are they, and this is how they see it, who are they and what authority do they have to undermine our choices on our planet? They don't have that authority. They're never going to do that. And it's not because they're so wonderful and benevolent. No, it's very basic. It has to do with hypocrisy. If they were to do that, what they are broadcasting to all of the other alien extraterrestrial civilizations is that it's perfectly okay for somebody else to go to their planet and do the same thing. They don't want that. They don't want anybody showing up on a planet, whatever, that's orbiting Arcturus to say, hey, we don't need to respect your leadership and your social institutions and your leader. We don't give a rip about your leader. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. They don't want that. Who wants that? Who wants somebody coming into your family telling you what to do? You've never met them. Not only are they not a member of your family, they don't even live in your town. You don't even know who they are. They could be from another country. They speak another language. They show up with an interpreter. And they start forcing you to do things? Who wants that? That just runs against the nature of any sentient being. That's why the aliens don't do it to us. This is just basic nuts and bolts. They don't want it done to them. However, they are intensely interested in watching our development. They're fascinated by it. Everything that we do, UFO conferences, human politics. I mean, human politics to most aliens is a constant Broadway show. It's constant entertainment, particularly because of their telepathic ability. They can watch a politician or a political movement say certain things and do certain things, and then they can look behind the scenes and understand, is that bona fide? Is it legitimate? Is it honest? Do the people saying they want to do X, Y, and Z really mean that? Or do they have an ulterior motive? Or as we like to say, a hidden agenda? Well, both and everything in between. They can see all of this, and they're amazingly entertained by watching a political movement say one thing and then watching that political movement do something else, or maybe do the same thing, because they've been through all this themselves. They don't want to interfere and mess this up. Who wants to go to the movie to watch a Star Wars trilogy where they're suddenly going to release 3 new movies? I'm a bit of a Star Wars fanatic or freak. I love them. And if I suddenly found out that they were going to release in 3 weeks, they kept it all quiet for who knows how long, 3 movies in a row, and those movies were going to be screened 2 hours each, a total of 6 hours with a 20-minute break, and the theater agrees to have sandwiches and drinks and salads available during the 20-minute break that everybody, after the movie ends, everybody can go get something to eat or drink and then go back and watch the next movie. Who in their right mind would go through the effort to watch those movies and then interrupt the movie in the middle? Nobody would do this. Anybody halfway interested that made the effort to go watch is going to sit there transfixed, enthralled, like I would, watching it, entertained 6 hours, and it felt like 20 minutes to watch all that. Who is going to stop that in the middle of the process? And in fact, if anybody comes in and tries to stop the movie, almost everybody in the theater is going to get angry at them, scream at them, say, go away, be quiet, reset the movie, and let's go, because they want to see it. That's the show that we put on for alien extraterrestrial visitors. It's not that they won't interfere because they don't want to come across as hypocrites and open themselves up to the same sort of action. That's true. But also because they're fascinated. Newspapers, books, magazines, physical inventions. Every time we come up with a new car, we don't know it, but alien extraterrestrials are as thrilled by automotive technology and new models released as we are. They love to watch all this stuff, of anything. And they're watching it very, very closely. They examine and watch all of these things between their own civilizations and also with us. The great difference is that the vast majority of humans don't know this. And the large majority of humans would deny that any of this occurs and would call anyone, such as me, who's saying that it does occur, a kook, because they don't have evidence, the evidence that they prefer. There's nothing wrong with saying that. That's true. But the problem, the great challenge that we face is that the sort of evidence that we would accept is evidence that resembles something that we already know, or evidence that's within a database of knowledge that we already have, that we've already compiled. These new advancements are going to come along with evidence we haven't seen before, so we don't think it's evidence. We dismiss it as a hoax. That's not evidence. Well, if you haven't seen it before, it's not evidence. That's true. So there's no evidence, so it's kooky. But then it happens. Particularly in the last 200 years, the advances in technology in many areas that we have shown this repeatedly. When microbes, bacteria and viruses, bacteria first because they're larger and the viruses are smaller, when the initial work into bacteria and infections was conducted, many members, the majority of the medical profession, just dismissed it, thought it was kooky. There was some research that literally had to cut their own arms open and spread infectious material and then wait and show the infection to prove to other people that this was the cause of infections and this is how they spread. This was not that long ago. This was in the 19th century. They had to do this. Now it's just accepted. That's one small example. Most humans have never seen bacteria through a microscope. Most humans have never looked through a microscope. These are humans that are aware of bacteria and diseases, but they believe in it and they can't see it. Because it exists, it has been proven. But at the time, there was no evidence. There were no photographs taken through a microscope of bacteria or of viruses to demonstrate that they existed. So the fact that no evidence that anyone would accept in the medical community existed, the existence of a microbe that could cause a problem was dismissed. Eventually, they came around. A similar thing with, take an even more basic, when it was decided that subways, trains running through tunnels underground would be instituted in the very late 19th century, there was large resistance for years, for many quarters. People are never going to take a stairway down through a hole in the ground into a tube and then get on a train running through that tube. They're not going to do that. That was the absolute belief. The idea to suggest that anybody would do that was crazy. Today, it's done all the time. It's called the subway. That's a mechanical example. And on and on and on. I remember watching Dick Tracy when I was a kid. And they showed the little phone with a TV screen on it, and you could communicate with people. Well, we have that today. It's called an Apple phone. 40 years ago, 50 years ago, that was science fiction fantasy. And if someone suggested it, there's no evidence that can be done. We're doing it now. Shoe phones. I remember watching a funny 1960s TV show called Get Smart. And one of the guys, and one of the characters in the show had a phone in his shoe, and he would take his shoe off, and the heel of his shoe, he would pull an antenna out, and then he would lift it up, and it looked like a phone, and it had a little rotary dial, and you'd make telephone calls. Ha, ha, ha. Shoe phones. That was a fantasy as late as the 1980s, that you could have a phone that was portable, put it in your pocket, talk around, and make phone calls. Today, That's the only way anybody seems to make a phone call anymore. But in the 1950s or 60s, that was dismissed as kooky because there was no evidence for it. Today, it's accepted technology. This is exactly what is going to happen with many, many things that alien extraterrestrials are going to demonstrate to us, which are rejected now for lack of evidence. The specific steps that many interested people can pursue to increase their understanding, awareness, and general knowledge of alien extraterrestrials is to start reading about them. A not very good place, and I would caution many people to have a look and have a very skeptical look, is Facebook. Facebook is loaded with special interest groups and pages of every stripe, whatever your hobby is. Fancy boots, sailboats, wristwatches, computers, aliens, extraterrestrials. There's a Facebook page or many pages in many groups that are there. So if it is very common for many people to go to Facebook as an information source. The challenge I have discovered with many of these groups is that they are heavily populated by members who are seeking entertainment and thrills and are also looking to pick fights, to argue with other group members, or to behave as if they are the masters of the information and the owners and they are the ultimate purveyors of truth. They toss around lots of buzzwords and get almost hostile when someone suggests a different way, that there's a different angle. This happened to me extensively when I was marketing my own book, and I never even came within a country mile of suggesting that what they thought and what their point of view meant to them. That's perfectly okay. Simply offering a new point of view or a new angle or a new perspective. Oh no, rejected out of hand. So, a long answer in the first part to your question of the steps people can take, the step they should probably not take is pursue Facebook as a bona fide source of information. However, they should look. They should go and get an idea of the types of information and the types of opinions that fly like used toilet paper in every direction. But don't swallow too much of it. Or don't swallow any of it if it doesn't taste good. But have a look. The next thing they should do is go to a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Level-headed approaches where there isn't a lot of emotionality and discussion. A good place to start is read my book, The Alien Handbook, A Guide to Extraterrestrials, released in 2018 by Ozark Mountain Publishing. My name is the author. Anybody can find it online at Barnes & Noble or Amazon, or right from the publisher. That book is a good start because it will lay out chapter by chapter certain aspects, alien extraterrestrial technologies, their ideas about Earth, their purposes for visiting Earth, when they're going to come and appear, what they want from Earth, what do we want from them, that sort of thing. That's one good starting point, but there are others. I don't mean to say that my book is the Bible, and that if you want salvation and you want to bring Jesus into your life, you have to come to my church. No, not at all. I'm just one alternative. But that's a good place to start. But there are many other places to start also. Google is a good place to start. Any particular angle a person interested in alien extraterrestrials has, they should give some time to formulating their question, because the search algorithms on Google and any search engine are going to key in on certain words. So depending on how the question is phrased, will bring up very similar or very different results. Somebody wants magazines, somebody wants magazine articles, somebody wants books, somebody wants videos, somebody wants something else. There are many, many ways to go pursue that information. Google is a good place to start for it, but it can't be done casually with an entertainment point of view to get anything more than entertaining thrills. That means if somebody invests 15 to 20 seconds in typing out a question that would take them 3 seconds to speak with words, then waits 0.2 of a second for the results to pop up, which is slow in computer processing time, then reads through and says, oh, that's cool, click, that's cool, click, that's cool, click, and spends 3 to 5 minutes looking at whatever it takes you to. That's going to amount to the beginning of titillation leading to entertainment, and that's it. It's not going to lead to any understanding. A person has to put just a little bit more time and thought and consideration into it. What do I really want to know about aliens? I would break it down into 2 areas. Do I want to know about the aliens and I don't really want to know about Earth? Or the other way around? Do I want to know what they can tell us about Earth and not so much about them? That's a good way to start. And that will lead to many different sources of information, and each individual person that wants to know more can then pursue what they find as it resonates with them. Just like shopping for a car. Some people like certain models of car, but they hate all red cars. So they're thrilled with the new BMW, but they hate red cars so much that when they get to the dealer and they see that new model that fascinates them, but it's red, they don't want it. But they don't know that until they get there. So the combinations of certain things they like and dislike produce a certain attraction or resistance or repulsiveness. They'll decide as they go. That's the sort of process as a person pursues magazines, books, articles, videos, information about conferences. The Ozark Mountain Publishing, the UFO conference here in Eureka Springs, all of the information from many, many conferences going back for years is available and can be gotten from the publishing company. That's also a good place to look. A wide, diverse variety of speakers. I was very honored this year to have been asked to, I was very honored to have asked to become one, can come and speak, have been asked to come and speak about a variety of topics all over the board. That information is widely available to anybody that wants it. And that can also raise awareness and understanding of alien extraterrestrials. So, long, complicated answer to your question, but that's how a person can take the steps to increase their knowledge, awareness, and understanding, if they want it. My final thoughts on the subject of alien extraterrestrials leads to a bigger view I have of human existence. In a nutshell, all of us are spiritual beings or energetic entities or beings, but we live a life temporarily in a human body. The connection is so strong and so well established, it is very hard for the vast majority of humans to imagine their existence without their body. In fact, we are who we are in our body, and that when the body stops functioning, we're gone. And that's certainly the way it appears to everyone else when someone passes away. None of that's true. We don't die. Our bodies expire. There's a greater picture involved. This is all done voluntarily. We are all connected to one another. God is not, and I will say this and offend many people with deep religious faith with my apologies in advance, I have no intention to offend anyone or contradict their beliefs. I'm offering a different one for consideration, that's it. God is not a single, powerful, patriarchal authority lording over us, handing out favors and punishments based on our good behavior or bad behavior, our generosity, our sins, our transgressions, or our wonderful deeds. We together are all God. The word God is good. In Islam, the word for God is Allah, all. That's where the word all comes from in English. We are all connected, we are all together, and all one. In the movie Star Wars from the 1970s, they came up with some very interesting phrases which were telepathically transmitted to the producers and the writers of the movie. May the force be with you. Well, that's just a different way of saying God bless you. Or may God's peace be upon you. There are different ways to say it in human languages. We are all connected to one another, including the alien extraterrestrials. We are part of a large galactic community. We don't recognize how and in what ways we're members of it yet, but we are. But none of this changes who we are as human beings. We are living a life on Earth, all of us, individually and collectively, depending on which groups that we belong to. Many of them we join voluntarily, others we're born into. We don't necessarily have to be part of them if we don't want, with certain specific purposes and missions. To always accept and look into and understand other people and acknowledge that all experience is good for us, especially what we deem the negative. And people that embrace this understanding that we really, all of us, are our brothers and our sisters' keeper, that we're all really in the same large rowboat, all rowing in the same direction. The things that we see going on in society that we deem negative don't have to be that way. They're optional in their choices, and we can choose in a different direction. For example, violent behavior or murder. It occurs simply because we teach each other to do it. There are many examples of many animal species that never harm each other. They don't harm each other, and they only harm other animals for food. Wolves don't regularly, methodically go and just murder other wolves just for the sake of murdering them so they can take the other wolves' TV set. We humans do it all the time. We are in many ways our own worst enemy, but it's completely by choice. We don't have to be that way. We can choose to go in a different direction. We can choose not to teach each other to harm one another, if we so choose. If we embrace a larger view that we are essentially energetic, spiritual beings having a temporary experience on earth, that our lifetime is an invaluable experience to not be wasted. We should pursue all sorts of experiences with an open mind and open heart and with goodwill, and take what may come, and always look upon everyone as our friend and treat others the way we want to be treated. We can do that. That's an option, and that's a choice. And our alien extraterrestrial friends and our guardian angel guides and all sorts of energetic beings will be more than happy to help and assist us.